We're going to continue talking about women in the technology industry, female entrepreneurs. And let me kick this off by being a bit contrarian. So that one of the themes seems to be here that technology is somewhat good for women, that it will allow them to balance work and life, that it will make, or the digital age will make kind of female attributes, in quotes, more in demand, and it will be all goodness, and the problems we're all talking about today will go away. Now, well, I think if you look closely, actually, the opposite, or you could make the point that the opposite is true. I've visited quite a lot of ecosystems around the world, internet ecosystems around the world recently, and the average kind of share of women entrepreneurs all over the world, except in places like the Middle East, surprisingly, is 10%. So my first question to you, Julie, would be, how do you explain that? I mean, is there something built in? Is it just kind of the question of teaching people in school to code, or is there something else going on?
Yeah, well, and I'm going to be horrible. I'm going to plug my book here. But you know, when I wrote Welcome to Entrepreneur Country, it was really kind of my journey over 25 years coming out of university and kind of how I figured out some of these things. I think a lot of it has, I mean, the previous panelists mentioned competitive. I think women, I played sports for 12 years, 3 hours a day, and boy, that'll make you competitive if you're not. So I think it took me a long time to stop applying a kind of discount to my life and start applying a premium. When I sold my first business, that really changed things for me in terms of confidence level. But I think the competitiveness was always really there because of sports. And I think that's one thing that we can do for our young women coming through. It's not just coding. It's not as if you learn how to code and somehow you become a technology superstar entrepreneur. It's a whole series of things about believing you have a unique contribution to make in the world and standing up and saying, damn it, I'm going to do it, right? And not every 22-year-old woman is ready to do that.
What you told me that for you, what's very important is the relationship you had with your father, that your father told you you can be anything you want.
Yeah, that's right. Well, my dad's an entrepreneur. Actually, he was a doctor, so I didn't really realize he was an entrepreneur as a child because he set up a medical practice. I just thought he was a doctor. But he socialized me to be an entrepreneur, and it's true. He was very busy, and then my parents got divorced, so I was even more distant from him. And so he kind of just said one thing. He just always said, anything you set your mind to, Julie, you can achieve. And so if I've heard it once, I've heard it 5,000 times. But you know, it's interesting that I think the relationship between a father and his daughter is hugely, hugely important. If I just do a kind of scan of my girlfriends, the ones that are close to their dads, they're just more confident. You know, okay, it's a sample size of 6 or 7, fair enough. But I do think the messages you get from your father about why you're important and valuable and loved and all the rest of it is really critical. And I spend a lot of time, a lot of the investors that I work with are kind of men that are 50, 55, and I find it just so hysterical because these are guys that have never given a thought to some of the issues that we were talking about in this room until their daughter hits age 22. And then you find yourself across from these men, and they say the most amusing things. They'll say, my daughter is being discriminated against at Goldman Sachs, and I will not put up with it, you know? And if you're kind of quick and gentle, you can kind of lead them to see that every woman is somebody's daughter, and maybe they need to kind of work on fixing the problem.
No, I mean, learning how to code or being friends with your father is one thing, but it seems to me that in the Valley or in London or Berlin, there are more structural reasons why we have so kind of only 10% of female entrepreneurs. I mean, is it, for example, is it the VCs that don't finance startups run by women?
Well, I mean, definitely one of the reasons after I sold my first business, I looked around and I had some offers to join other venture firms as a partner. And to be honest, I just thought I'd rather set up my own firm because I think male or female, you don't win by playing by somebody else's rules. You have to create the rules of engagement to win. And I really believe that. And so I thought, you know, I don't have a bias towards backing women, but it just so happens that a good 40% of the people that we back at Ariadne Capital over the past 12 years have been female entrepreneurs, and some pretty gutsy ones as well. Women that have had that kind of uncapped potential that Merit was just talking about, women that have done amazing things. I think as we have more women who build billion-pound, euro, dollar businesses out of Europe and make enormous fortunes, a lot of those women will become venture capitalists backing other entrepreneurs. But when I made some money with my previous business, I thought, okay, I think my skill set is to facilitate entrepreneurship. So it felt like the right time actually to go into the business of helping other entrepreneurs.
So when you sold First Tuesday, you could have done something else. You could have joined another company, another VC firm, but you chose to create your own fund. So
That's right.
Explain to me why, but also explain to me what is different. Why do you manage to find women entrepreneurs when firms with lots more partners apparently can't?
Well, you know, First Tuesday, for those of you who don't remember, was a network of entrepreneurs that straddled about 50 cities and really helped to create kind of 1.0 internet across Europe. And so what I could see, which was so blindingly obvious, is that we have enormously powerful, courageous entrepreneurs across Europe. So there was never any question about the high quality of entrepreneurs, but I do have to admit that I felt that there was a gap between the financing of entrepreneurship and the quality of entrepreneurs. So that was the reason why, really, I decided to set it up, is because I felt that capital follows ideas, and that Europe's entrepreneurs needed a gold standard. They needed an outrageously supportive group of investors for them. So I don't, we've never really kind of, if you will, gone out. It's true that I travel constantly to meet entrepreneurs, but if you will, the whole thing that you try to do as a venture capitalist is to create a gravitational field. You try to send out the values. You write a book. You try to send out the message. We're empathetic to the entrepreneur. We're not going to desert you in your near-death experiences. So one woman that we backed, Christina Domek of Spinvox, absolutely had the capability to create a billion-pound business, had done 33 operator deals with Spinvox, and she got into kind of a death dance with her board, and it all went kind of pear-shaped. But everybody just deserted her. Everybody that had put the money in, there was not one single person in the investor base, or frankly in the entire London community, who stayed with her when she got attacked. And she got ferociously attacked. And I think, I wasn't trying, I thought that she was grievously hard done by. And so I think people watch venture capitalists. Do they really support you when you're down and out? And the kind of dirty little secret is that a lot of them kind of talk about the entrepreneurs that they back behind their back, right? And so I think you need to stand up and say, this is what we believe. And a lot of the VC community actually thinks that the party starts with them. They don't actually think their job is to follow the entrepreneur. They don't actually think their job is to back the industrialist, and that they're a service industry to the entrepreneur. And we just take a radically different view.
Now, back to those 10%. I mean, when I go to tech conferences, TechCrunch conferences, or receptions by, let's say, a big Silicon Valley venture capital firm, I mean, you can sense these are structurally very male affairs. I mean, it's a certain kind of competition where I think it's overdoing it.
Scary.
So is there something in that structure that kind of creates that 10%? And what would you, I mean, are there one or two things you would change to improve those 10%?
It's an interesting question. I think I answer it two different ways. I really don't see the world male-female. I see it feminine leadership qualities and masculine leadership qualities. And some of those masculine leadership qualities are pretty good, actually. I think competitive, assertive, all of that, however you want to. I don't think we should just kind of grab all the positive ones for women and call them, feminine leadership qualities. But there's a reason why there's wonderful men out there, and that, very decisive. Call a whole batch of those characteristics masculine. And I think great entrepreneurs have to have the best of both. So Alistair Lukes, he founded Monetize, which is a leader in mobile banking, and we backed him in 2004. It's a $1 billion company now. It's one of those headquarter-based UK firms that is buying their US competitor, backed by Visa 5 times, has built the mobile banking industry, etc. He is one of the most feminine leaders that I know. I mean, the financial services industry does not back startups, right? For him to have gotten banks to adopt Monetize is just amazing. And yet, he's a rugby player and he's all the rest of what you might, but he's not alpha male, arrogant, or ignorant, right? So, it goes back to, I just felt that I wasn't going to win by playing by somebody else's rules. I didn't want to go to any, I was not feeling compelled to go to any venture capital firm. I just said, I'm going to build my own cathedral and not try to bash my head against somebody else's glass ceiling.
Cool. One or two perhaps more general questions about the tech industry. I mean, we've talked about Silicon Valley, or the panel before us was about Silicon Valley mostly. So what's happening in Europe from your point of view? What's still missing in Europe? I mean, it seems to me Berlin is growing nicely. You have lots of entrepreneurs and startups in Estonia, in Stockholm.
That's right.
So something is growing, but what's missing still?
Two things. I think, first of all, and it's kind of funny as an American who's lived for 25 years in Europe saying this, but too many people are somehow trying to make Europe look like the States, and it always kind of baffles me. Maybe it's because I've been to so many parts of this kind of continent, but the venture industry is not going to look like Sand Hill Road. The tech industry is going to look different than it does in the States, and so forth. So I think we have to apply models of venture capital to Europe, and I just think that's going to look very, very different than the way it happens in the U.S. And I don't want to model myself. I grew up in Palo Alto. I don't want Europe to look like Palo Alto because I came here for other reasons. We have many, I mean, the whole list of in excess of $100 million dollar exits in Europe, and big companies like Shazam that just got another 40 million from Carlos Slim the other day, and so forth. So I think one of the things that needs to change is that the data which is covering the financing of entrepreneurship in Europe is just wrong. It's capturing, there's a lot of deals that get funded by the Carlos Slims of the world in Europe, the family offices, et cetera. And that data doesn't get captured by any of the people who do the data on venture capital deals. So you get these asset allocators, the fund of funds and the rest of them, who say, well, venture capital in Europe it doesn't work as an asset class. But they can't really explain then why there are so many monetizers and Shazams and Spotifys and all of the rest of them. And they kind of look perplexed when you say, well, on my math, some people are making some really good money here backing. But it's a bigger thing than just venture capital, because the financing of entrepreneurship is happening. It's not just venture capital. It's family offices, it's strategic investors, it's crowdfunding. It's changing. You can't stay put and just say, okay, well, I've got my venture fund, so now I'm good and I can just focus on it for 10 years. It's much more dynamic than that.
Great. One last question, since Margaret had to answer that question too. So what else would you like to be if you were not kind of a role model for female entrepreneurs in Europe?
What else would I be?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. It is so hard to say that, because I'm just, what else would I be? I'd probably do the whole series of, welcome to travels in entrepreneur country, secrets of all of that. I'd probably be a writer and just kind of go around and tell the stories of Europe's entrepreneurs, because it's a lot of fun.
Great. Thanks, Julie. And thanks for you, Julie.
Thank you.